Hi everybody, my name is Gregory Scott. Thank you for joining me today. I want to talk to you about something that's really been a big part of my experience and that's really near and dear to my heart. And now, I've been thinking about making this video for a while, but I haven't really known the right format. So, what I want to talk about is something that's probably not going to be very popular, but it's something that's often very serious and can have a big effect on your life, and that's shyness and low self-esteem. And this is something that has been a big part of my experience. And now the fact that I'm making videos on YouTube, I think there's a disconnect there. It's like if you're really shy and have low self-esteem, how do you end up making videos on YouTube? So I just want to talk about that a little bit. It's always been something that's been with me. As a child, I never really felt like I could speak up for myself. I grew up in a family with a lot of Scorpios and a Capricorn as well. So there was always a sense of don't speak, we don't want to hear what you're saying. And everyone was very much into their kind of thing and what they were trying to achieve. So I always felt like if I was to say something, it wouldn't go down very well. And I think that's a big part of it, the um, anticipation of how you are going to be received as a person. Um, so for instance, if your experience is whenever you open your mouth, everyone just falls all over themselves and gives you flowers, you're going to have that evidence and you're going to think, hey, people like what I have to say, so I'm going to speak more. In my family, that wasn't the case. So I started to really go into myself. And the problem with that is that the more I did that, the more I kind of internalized my feelings and the more I started to live in my own head and the more I was unable to put things into words. And that it kind of works both ways. You know, the stronger you internalize things and the stronger you feel things, then often it seems like words don't do things justice. And it was a big thing in my, especially in my early 20s, where I'd be feeling these huge emotions, and then there'd be a word like, either despair or fear or elation or ecstasy or whatever. And it was just like, well, that doesn't do my feelings any justice. And I became very much insulated, and that's not a good thing. It's important to kind of speak and connect with other people. Okay, so I think people who watch my channel, I think most of you are really highly sensitive like myself, and that's why I'm making this, because I do want to let you know that even if you are very sensitive and shy and you find it difficult to stand up for yourself and have people look at you and listen to you, it's doable. It's really something that you can work on and that you can overcome. You don't have to accept that and you don't have to live with it for the rest of your life. Now, there are reasons to have shyness and low self-esteem. First of all, if you have that as a person, it's a theme in your life that you can either choose to live with or that you can choose to overcome. And also the people who come into contact with you, they're going to have a choice when they're with you. They can either support you or they can take advantage of your shyness. So that's a very kind of karmic thing that you bring into the world for other people. I think if you decide to try and overcome this, the first thing that you need to do is pick your battles. Don't say, right, I'm going to face this fear once and for all. I'm going to sort it out. I'm going to book myself a speaking engagement in a stadium and speak to thousands of people. That's going from one extreme to the next. You're kind of overdoing it. And that could end up as a really negative experience because you have to kind of build your way up to this kind of thing. So pick your battles. See what situations you can be in where you can speak up for yourself and be yourself and where you're likely to get a positive response. Because initially that's very important. You don't want to start opening your mouth and immediately be shut down because that will only confirm to you in your own mind why you've been shy and why you've had low self-esteem in the first place. So find like-minded people in some sort of community or environment and start to share your ideas in a safe environment where you are going to be supported. Okay? So the other thing is accept who you are. I often make these videos and I find the beginning very difficult. I find it very difficult to say, hello everyone, my name is Gregory Scott, it's nice to be with you. I find that very awkward. So my initial response to that is to hate myself. to say, God, why can't you just get a grip, deal with it, and just be confident? And that's faulty thinking, and that's something I'm aware of. When you start to hate yourself in an attempt to sort yourself out, that never works. It's like when someone tells you to snap out of it. I've never snapped out of it when someone's told me to. It doesn't work. If it was that simple, you would have done it for yourself long ago. Okay? So when I have those thoughts, what I do for myself is I flip it and I love myself instead, and I take care of myself. So I don't just say, oh, get a grip of yourself, deal with it. I say, this is difficult for you. You're trying to do something to help other people, to help yourself, to get a message across. You find the beginning difficult. I take extra care of myself and I support myself, and I kind of galvanize my forces to do that. And that's really important. So accept that you have that shyness within you, that it's not just going to go away if you're harsh with yourself, that you have to give yourself that extra love, extra support, and that's the way to overcome it. Now, the next thing, I've already touched on this a little bit, is to build positive experiences and to build positive evidence that you can appear well in public, and then whenever you're in a scary situation again, you can think back to that and say, well, you know, when I spoke to that group of people, it went really well. So an example of that for me would be about 5 years ago, I started to speak to people in a kind of group setting, and I found it impossible to speak to kind of more than if there were 3 people in the room. I couldn't do it. My voice would close up, my voice would shake, which in itself would embarrass me and would make it worse. I'd go red, I'd shake, and it was really very, very debilitating. So the way I did it is I eased myself into it. I spoke to people one-to-one, then I spoke to 2 people, 3 people, and then I built that evidence. Once I'd done the 3 people, and it had been successful, I said, hey, I can do this, so let's try 4. And I continued to challenge myself and push myself, and now whenever, so for instance, if I have to speak to 10 people now, I think, well, you've spoken to 9 people, that went well, you can do this too. So it's taking steps and building that evidence so you can positively and slowly kind of move forward. The next thing that really works is positive affirmations. So you have to stand up at your local school and you have to give a speech. If you go up there and you say, oh my God, I'm going to fail, they're all going to laugh at me, it's going to be horrendous. Those affirmations are kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they will make you come across in a way that's defensive and that's almost expecting that negative feedback. So it's important to say, I am going to do this well. If it doesn't go well, I will still love myself, to lower the stakes a little bit and make it less dramatic and less serious. I am a good public speaker. I've done this in the past. I love and support myself. People want to hear what I have to say. People love me. People want to listen. And those are the kind of things that will, just by thinking them, will make you sit up, open you up, and then when you get on that stage and you speak, you express that, and people are much more likely to respond to you in a positive way. Okay, the other thing that's interesting is not everyone. Okay, so for instance, on YouTube, there are lots of different astrologers, and there are people who are different. Okay, so for instance, you've got people like Alyssa Sharp, who's like a comedian and who's like very, very confident. People like Deborah Silverman, I think. Deborah Silverman, same thing, very bubbly, lively, confident kind of person. That's who they are. They've got their own issues to deal with. It just so happens that confidence isn't one of them. So don't try and emulate others. Accept that you deal with shyness, that you deal with low self-esteem, and do the best you can for yourself. Don't look at confident people, for instance, like the ones I just mentioned, and compare yourself and say, well, they're really confident, so therefore I should be too. That's their unique personality. By comparing yourself, you will always feel less than. Only look at where you're at and what you can do, and then go from there. Okay, this is a little bit kind of, this might be a little bit controversial, but Shyness and low self-esteem are a form of ego. So if I'm shy, then I'm really self-conscious, and it's almost like my ego saying, I know what my faults are, therefore I'm going to be really aware of them, and it's almost like you can't criticize me because I've beat you to the punch. I know that I'm shy and I'm not good enough myself, therefore you can't tell me that I'm not good enough. And it's almost like you're preempting negative feedback by heaping it on yourself. So it's a form of ego that keeps you trapped, that gives you a sense of control, but that makes you feel like you can't do things, and almost like happy about it. Does that make sense? So it's a form of control, and you're trying to control something that doesn't serve you in the first place. So the way out of that is to let it go, to realize that you're not in control of who you are at times. You came to this planet with certain attributes, and you didn't pick those. So you accept those attributes and you do the best you can with it. But you don't try and do other people's thinking for them, and you don't try and preempt other people's ideas and thoughts of you, because that's ego. That's what the ego does. You should go, well, should is another thing, that you know, that's an ego device. But really it's about walking out into the world without trying to control other people's opinions of you. Okay. Right. Personally, it takes me a long time to get comfortable with people. If I'm speaking, if I meet new people, even if I like them, I find it quite nerve-wracking. I find it quite, my walls go up, and because of my kind of past experiences of saying, you know, we don't want to hear this, blah, 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 my guard goes up. It's something I'm aware of, but I don't consciously do it. So allow yourself time to become comfortable. If it takes you a long time, like it does me, if I meet someone and I make friends with them, it takes me about 3 months to feel really comfortable with them. I'm really on guard with people. So, I mean, I wish it would be a matter of hours, but it isn't with me. So I accept that, and I make allowance for that, and I try and spend time with these people, and I try and you know, minimize. I try not portray it so much. I don't try and come across as, oh, you know, I'm really uncomfortable in your presence. I try and minimize that, but I give myself that time to say, listen, you've met this person recently. It's going to take you a while. There's nothing you can do to change it. Just write it out. And then when I do that, first of all, I make my own life easier, and second of all, it just allows the relationship to progress naturally. On the other side, that's a great defense mechanism for me as well. I mean, I think I've avoided a lot of negative situation in my life because I have that built-in shyness. I mean, if I had a choice, I wouldn't have it, but I do. So the fact that I'm on guard for the first 3 months means that often I don't pursue relationships which would be quite negative for me. Whereas other people who are really open-hearted and just jump into things, they often don't see red flags about other people. And because I am so shy, I do see those red flags, and I've avoided a lot of bad situations as a result. You know, people who aren't interested in my well-being, people who want to take advantage, for instance, or, you know, whatever. So it is a kind of, it's a sword that cuts both ways. It makes my life more difficult, but it also protects me from things. Right. Another thing that'll help free you up is to get any skeletons out of the closet. And this is something that's difficult and that's quite serious, but very doable. So for instance, if you were a bully at school, if you bullied other people, and it's a couple of years, it's 20 years later now, but at the back of your mind, you still know that those people are out there who you bullied when you were much younger. And that kind of weighs on you quite heavily. You feel guilty about it, you feel remorse. That could increase your shyness, because it adds to the sense of, I'm going to be found out here. So it's like, for instance, you go up on stage and you speak, there may be that thought in the back of your mind, one of those kids that I bullied 20 years ago could be sitting in the audience and say, you're a fraud. I don't believe you. You were terrible to me as a child. That could really make you look over your shoulder and make you feel like you weren't the real deal, and that could increase feelings of low self-esteem. So the way to do that is to make amends to those people and to face those things head on, and to try and get in touch with those people and say, 20 years ago, and this is hard, don't get me wrong, this is hard, but it's very liberating, it's very freeing to do this, to say, I bullied you 20 years ago, I'm sorry for my actions, and I hope you can forgive me. What can I do to make this right? And some people are going to say, that's fine, I forgive you. But some people are going to say, you absolutely ruined my life. And some people will throw you out and say, I don't want to speak to you. You did what you did, you made your bed, now lie in it. That's fine. All you need to do is clear your side of the street, so to speak. You need to get that junk out of your system, because that will sit there and kind of eat away at you. So it's important to make amends to people, to get rid of those kind of skeletons in your closet, and to liberate yourself of that guilt. Now, the other thing is practice. Practice, practice, practice. You know, they always say that. But for instance, my journey again, at some point I realized that I didn't want to be crippled with this my whole life. I didn't want to, because I feel like, even though I am very sensitive, because of my sensitivity, I get a lot of messages, I get a lot of information, and I thought, what's the point of getting all this information if you can't express it, you know? So, because I do feel some of it is very useful. So I decided to do something about it, and I thought, what can I do, you know? So, like I said earlier, I started to go to these kind of groups and speak to people, and I still wasn't happy with that after I'd mastered that. So I mean, I'm quite an extreme person. I don't do things by half. I always overdo things. I decided to train as a school teacher, and I did become a school teacher. I qualified, and because somewhere along the road I realized that even though I couldn't speak to groups of adults, I could just about manage to speak to groups of kids. So I did that. I was terrified in before going some of these lessons. I used to teach. I taught German and French in high school, so 11 to 16, which isn't the most kind of welcoming crowd anyway. But the good thing about that was the kids were always so involved in their own stuff that they didn't even pay attention to me. So whether I was nervous or not, they barely noticed. The good thing about that was it gave me the opportunity to practice speaking to people and speaking to groups of people, and also having to assert myself to get people's attention. Now, the first time I did it, I was shaking. I was in the toilets, praying, saying, you know, please help me get through this. I can't do this myself. Because that's the thing, at that point, I couldn't do it myself. I was a shy person with low self-esteem. How on earth was I going to stand in front of 30 children and speak to them and teach them some German, you know? And it's because I have that faith, and because I do have access to a power greater than myself, which is the whole point of faith for me. The whole point of having faith for me is to support me and help me, and to do what the higher power or God or the universe or source or whatever wants me to do on this planet. I mean, I'm here for a reason. So when I can't do things for myself, I ask for the strength, and the strength is given to me. So I was in the toilets praying. I went in there, I did it, and each time I did it, it got easier. And then after I left the teaching thing, I started to speak to groups of adults, and that was terrifying. And then I did it, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it is a practice thing. So another great organization, which I haven't joined, but I've heard a lot of wonderful things about, and I will join in future, in fact, is something called Toastmasters. And you can check them out on YouTube. It's Toastmasters International. They've got a website as well. And it's about improving your public speaking skills, your leadership skills, that, you know, that public persona. And if you ask, I mean, in any survey of a country or whatever, what is your greatest fear? My greatest fear is to speak in front of people and to do public speaking. I think 90% of the population will have that fear. So you're not unique in this. Right, where was I? Yeah, so they're an organization that helps you do that, and they have clubs, and you join these clubs and you support each other in speaking and you practice and all of this stuff. And so you don't have to go to the extremes I did of becoming a school teacher. You can join these Toastmaster clubs and you can speak to other people and you can do it that way. But practice is an important thing. Okay, and that's it really. I mean, the final thing I just want to leave you with is that this is very doable. I still get shyness and low self-esteem, but I don't let it I don't let it stop me. I realize that I can do the things I want anyway. That feeling will be there, but I can do it. I may not be as it may not come across as easy as other people who are blessed with confidence. But that doesn't make my contribution any better or any worse, it just makes it different. So I realize that the fear is just that, it's a fear, and that I don't need to let that fear control my life, and that I can continue to do what I'd like to do regardless of the fear or not. So that's one thing. The second thing is that it gets better. The more you face that fear, the less it controls your life and the less powerful it is. So, you know, when I walked into that classroom first time, I was shaking and sweating and my voice was shaking. And it didn't shake as much and I didn't sweat as much and I didn't get as scared. And now I still get it, but it's nowhere near where it was. So it does get better, but you do have to face these things. And I think when they do things like this with phobias, I think it's called exposure therapy or something. You expose yourself to the thing that frightens you, and by exposing yourself, the response gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and you start to face those fears. And that's it. I wanted to make this video because I think a lot of light workers, particularly sensitive people like me and people who can relate to me because they're sensitive themselves, deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and I just wanted to give you some hope really and share my experience of it with you, that things can get better and that you can live your life with this. So yeah, I hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions or comments, just leave them below. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with me for any of the services I provide, like astrology or tarot or things like that, then have a look at my website, which is gregoryscott.com. And I will speak to you soon.